Good morning. Welcome once again to the Kauffman FastTrac Author Series. This is Alana Mueller, president of Kauffman FastTrac, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Today, our featured speaker is John Jantsch. John has been called the world's most practical small business expert for consistently delivering real-world, proven small business marketing ideas and strategies. He is a marketing consultant, speaker, and best-selling author of Duct Tape Marketing, The Commitment Engine, and The Referral Engine. John is also the creator of the Duct Tape Marketing System and Duct Tape Marketing Consulting Network that trains and licenses small business marketing consultants around the world. His blog was chosen as a Forbes favorite for marketing and small business, and his podcast, a top 10 marketing show on iTunes, was called A Must Listen by Fast Company magazine. It is my pleasure to welcome my friend and author, John Jantsch, not only to the FastTrac Author Series, but here in what I'm calling the Kauffman FastTrac Studio, live and in person today. So, John, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you, everybody, for showing up. Pat yourself on the back for continuing your education. It is a lifelong process if you're going to be an entrepreneur. It is a little weird, Alana, that we're sitting and doing this webinar out to the world, and you and I are sitting here looking at each other. So, if it sounds like I'm speaking to one person in our studio, there's a reason for that. So we're going to talk about really a topic that I explored extensively, probably for the last 25 years, but certainly in the last year in preparation to write a book that you see on the screen now called The Commitment Engine, Making Work Worth It. This book, in a way, started out as a follow-up to my last book, which was called The Referral Engine, where I studied a lot of companies that were very good at getting referrals and making that a significant part of their marketing. And what I wanted to do was initially go out and find out, because I ran across a lot of companies that had extreme loyalty and customers that were just raving fans, and I wanted to go out and find out, how do you do that? How do you get people, a larger group of people, the community, customers, to commit to your business, and then obviously, how do you get people that come to work every day in that business to commit to a business so that you really ultimately have these raving fans? I quickly found out that there were really some real commonalities in the companies that I started studying, and that's really the bulk of what I want to share with you today. If you are one of those, let me find how slides advance here. There it is. If you are one of those people, I'd also say that shares things with your Twitter following when you attend these. I find that a lot of people do that now. My handle is just at duct tape, DUCTTAPE, and hopefully I'll say something worth sharing with your followers. The three things that I found were very common in the companies that I came to call commitment engines was that they had a ridiculous passion for community, the larger community, and really actually a definition of community that was maybe beyond what we even talk about today. A lot of people think about community as their Facebook fans or their customers, and I'm really talking about really all the stakeholders that we might talk about, vendors, employees, mentors, investors, even the community at large, and the government that you actually support with your capitalism as part of the larger community. They also had, I found, a real, because one of the main reasons that they had commitment in the community was I found that they also had employees that were extremely passionate. There was a culture of shared commitment. Everybody was on the same page. And I found then, digging deeper, that it often became about because they had a CEO or a founder or a partner group that just had an extreme hunger for clarity. In other words, really very focused on what they stood for, why they did what they did. And that combination actually is really what created commitment then in the larger community. So for these companies, clarity actually became their strategy, their primary strategy. And I know that we talk about all the time, probably every speaker that you hear talk about business or startups or marketing is going to talk about strategy, but I think it's probably one of the most confusing terms that there is out there, because I think we try to wrap so many things in it to the point where it is meaningless. And what I found with these organizations is that they were extremely, extremely focused on really one reason for being. I want to talk to you, and I'm going to talk about, I think I have 4 or 5 examples of companies that show up in the book. And I want to talk to you about each of them and how that applies. So a company in Cincinnati, Ohio, JantschAuthor. It's a janitorial services company founded by Tony and Mary Miller. They were really, by all rights, pretty successful company. They were doing about $1 million in business. They had about 50 employees, but they had a real people problem. They had really great trouble finding enough people and keeping enough good people to do the work that they had committed to every single day. And so, like a lot of good entrepreneurs, they decided they were going to solve their people problem, and they locked themselves in a library on a Saturday and checked out every book they could find on retention and finding employees. And one nugget that they came up with was that you had to make it easy for your employees to get to work or to get to the projects that they were doing. So the next day they went out and bought a big bus, and it became the JantschAuthor Company Shuttle. They started driving around to picking up their employees, and funny thing happened. It was actually one of the first times that they had really spent significant time in the neighborhoods where their employees lived and seen, in many cases, the loss of hope and the abject poverty in which their employees actually lived in. And what they concluded was they didn't have a people problem so much as they had a dreaming problem. Apparently not that many people dream about going into the janitorial services business, and so they were, of course, attracting in many cases people that this was their last hope, or this was just another job in a string of jobs. So what they decided to do was actually address the dreaming problem. So they created, in fact, entire level of management that they called their dream managers. And their entire job was to work with every single employee and help them find something to dream about and identify something to dream about and go after. It didn't really matter how big or small. Get a GED, send their kid to college, go on vacation. Again, it didn't matter, but the goal was to give everybody something to be shooting for. And what they found, and of course this now lives throughout the organization, but what they found is when they were actually able to reinstall or reinvigorate dreaming in their employees, it changed everything about their organization. Fast forward to today, they are doing about $15 million in business, have about 300 employees, and virtually no turnover problem in an industry that in some cases has 100% turnover in a quarterly basis. And the thing they will tell you, though, on the street that they're the most proud of is that JantschAuthor is now the place you go to work when you want to get out of the janitorial services business. And so they've effectively discovered that what their purpose or their meaning is to create dreams, and they've disguised it as a janitorial services company. And that idea, and they will, if you ask them, they will tell you that is what their company is. That's what they stand for. That's why they do what they do, is to make people's dreams come true. And it actually has created a phenomenal business in just doing that one simple thing. That total clarity about why they exist is what makes their business happen. I'll give you another example. Many of you are probably familiar with the products of 37 Signals, Basecamp, and the like. Jason Fried was the founder of this business. It's in Chicago, Illinois. Tremendously successful, tremendously profitable business. And they've created it because their entire goal, their entire reason for being, is to create products and services that are so simple and clear that their fans, that their customers actually can't live without them. And that is really their entire goal. And the thing that I love about 37 Signals and their clarity, their idea of creating total simplicity, is that it not only shows up in their products. I mean, and any of you that are users know that you know exactly what to do in Basecamp Next, and you know exactly how to make it work. And in fact, what they will tell you is that one of the secrets to bringing that clarity to life in their products is they spend more time figuring out what to leave out than what to leave in. And what happens, and I've had the chance to visit their office, is that this isn't just something they put on their website. It's not just a product description or the way they talk about their products. It's everything that has to do with their company. Their offices are extremely practical and extremely simple. The way they hire people, the way they price things, simplicity runs through everything they do, even though what they actually do is in some cases rather complex. And so their reason for being, their total clarity, is about being simple and building a business that is ultimately very profitable, but also very simple. Some of you probably, or that are viewing the screen at least, probably remember the movie City Slickers. And in this particular scene, Jack Palance tells Billy Crystal's character, or Billy Crystal actually asked him, what's the secret to success in life? And he holds up his finger and says, it's one thing. And of course, Billy Crystal says, well, what's the one thing? Tell me. And he says, well, that's what you have to figure out. And I think that really applies to this idea of clarity that I'm talking about. The businesses that I found had this sense of commitment throughout the community and throughout their own staff, had really narrowed their business down to standing for one very simple thing, one very clear thing, and that in many cases that reason for being maybe didn't have anything to do with the products or services that they actually created. I shared the sample or the example of Jantsch, and in their case, their reason for being is to make dreams come true, and really certainly doesn't, they do that, they use the vehicle for doing that as employment through a janitorial services company, but that's not what drives what they do. So what's your one thing? So I'm going to move to talking a little bit about how you find that one thing. Many of you that have studied any marketing, academic marketing at least, you've run across the 4 Ps, but I think that there's a place in today's world to really update the notion of the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps where you would create a product and you would figure out what to price it, you would get it placed somewhere, and then you'd promote the heck out of it. But I think today, passion and purpose and what I'm calling a value proposition, and even a personality or a persona of your business, and how you demonstrate your passion and purpose, I think have really become the strategy of how to build a business that works. So passion is really the why of the owner. It's why you get up. It's why you want to make a difference. It's why you do what you do. What are you passionate about? Are you doing a business that you're passionate about? Now, the purpose then is the why of the business. Why are you making a difference? Why would I buy from you? The value proposition then is the what of the business. What is it that you do that creates a difference, that creates an exchange of value? And then the persona is really what's the personality. I talked about making dreams come true. That obviously creates a personality for that business. I talked about simplicity with 37 signals. That actually creates a personality for that business, but how do you actually, what are the tangible set of daily habits and processes that offer really proof of your purpose? So I want to go through some questions that I found that help, and this counts as the exercise part of what we're going to do today and talk about today. But I want to, one of the things I have found is that a lot of times we have the answers. We're just not asking the right questions. So I want to suggest some questions that I think can be very helpful in finding this idea of passion and purpose. Because I will say that many people come to me and say, I get it, but how do I find this? I want to make sure that I'm working on purpose. I want to do what I love. But how do I get to the essence of that? And I think it starts by having the discipline to lock yourself away and really consider some of these things personally, and then to also bring your, if you have a team or you have a staff, bring those folks together and participate in maybe building the answers to some of these questions together. So here are your passion questions. Some of these are pretty simple, but it's amazing how infrequently we consider these anymore. What do you really want in your life? Your business is meant, I think, in many cases, to serve your life. But if you don't and can't define what that means, your business is just as likely to suck the life out of you. So what don't you want in life? Now, for a lot of people, unfortunately, that's actually an easier question to answer. So if you want to start there, there's no reason that you can't start there and really start understanding, because in many cases it's the flip side of what you do want in your life. So what's really holding you back? Now, I know this is a really, really tough question for a lot of people, but are the constraints that are holding you from doing what it is, whether it's in this business or whether it's in chucking what you're doing right now and really going after what you know you were meant to do, have you ever stopped to consider what really is holding you back? Is it, are there things that you need to give up, whether they are false beliefs or really a belief that you can't actually accomplish what you want to accomplish? And then the last one is, and I'm going to take a sip of coffee, so hang on. The last one is, what's your superpower? Now, this may seem like a really odd question, but what I have found is that I think we all, when we're talking about passions and doing things that we love or that we're passionate about, I think we all have unique abilities that really serve that or get in the way, actually, quite frankly, of doing that. And I think it's really important to understand at the most basic level what that means or is for you. For example, a lot of people, when I will ask them this question, they'll talk about maybe a skill or something they've learned or a job title or a function. For example, some people may say, oh, well, your superpower may be writing or speaking, because I do a lot of those things. But I think it's much more basic than that. I think you have to dig deeper than that. I will tell you that for me, I often believe that my real superpower is curiosity. The fact that I'm very, very curious about how things work and why they don't work, and how to take things apart and how to recognize patterns and bring those patterns to other aspects of my business or other systems of my business, that's really the superpower that allows me, I think, to deliver value. Everything else is really just tactical in a lot of ways. And I think that it's important that you really get a sense of that, because what that allows me to then do is understand when I'm focused on what I call the highest payoff work, and understand where I then need to bring in support and help in other areas of my business. So your purpose questions, if we're going to get at what it is, the higher purpose that you believe this business serves, and again, it's just the why you do what you do. There's some great questions for that. What is it that you love most about the work that you're doing? What are the 2 or 3 highest payoff activities that when you're doing those, people always use the cliche of, time disappears. It is the thing that drives your business forward the quickest. Who do you need to see you as a hero? Again, another sort of odd question. But for me, what that does is, in many ways, it puts up the bar for, who do you never want to let down? I think parents probably can, associate or with that question in many cases when it comes to their children. But I think really when you're talking about markets and when you're talking about businesses, I serve and I love serve. I've been a small business owner for 25 years, and I love small business owners. I love the passion. I love the craziness, the confusion, the chaos, everything that goes with the package. And so in many cases, that really drives me to do what I do. That's a group I never want to let down. So how does this business serve your passion? A lot of your higher purpose, needs to, people use that, again, cliche, do what you love and the money will follow. And, unfortunately, I think that's only half true. Yes, I think it's extremely important that you do what you love, but you better really get good at doing what you love if you want to build a business out of this. And that's the part that I think purpose really brings. So what's your purpose story? Is there a way for you to then start, I told the story of the Millers and going back where they actually, where purpose sort of found them. What's your story about purpose finding you? Now, this can be, for many people, there are a lot of solopreneurs, probably any number of you on here, or maybe even would-be entrepreneurs. So a lot of this line of questioning is something that I think you really should do and can do on your own in preparation, certainly as you start your own business. But if you have a team, if you have a staff, this is a great exercise to bring them in as well. A rather gut-wrenching question that you can ask your entire team at some point is, who would care if this business went away? What difference would it make? What difference are we making? A lot of times, I think, particularly, and frankly, you can extend this even farther. Bring in some of your customers. Bring in some of your vendors, your mentors, suppliers, maybe even competitors, and start having these conversations. And I think that it can be some of the most eye-opening work that you'll ever do to really hear from your different stakeholders the difference you're making, or in some cases, the difference you're not making. And I think that the search sort of for purpose in many cases can be something that is a collaborative search, because in a lot of cases you are making a difference. There is a purpose that's driving your business, and there are people that don't ever want to see your business go away. But have you captured that the essence of that? Are you communicating that? Are you using that maybe even as your core marketing message? So the value proposition questions, again, once we find and discover some ideas about higher purpose and passion, what are some things then that how can we turn those two things into something that a market would care about, that delivers value to a market? Can we do something that nobody else is doing? Can we solve the greatest frustration of our customers or prospects? Can we create an innovation that's so obvious that we can't believe nobody's done it before? Can we find just unique ways to package and price and deliver our products and services? Can we create a totally unique customer experience? These are the ways that we turn this idea of making dreams come true, or this idea of simplicity that I shared. These are the ways that we actually tangibly turn these into value propositions that allow somebody to say, here's why you need to hire this company. Here's why you need to buy from this company. And then the last one is just there are common characteristics, personality traits we might even call them, that I think a lot of us come to really appreciate in people. And I think that we can take that notion or that concept, quite frankly, to the businesses that we create. Can we put off a persona? Does our purpose and our passion allow us to put off a persona that inspires, that demonstrates innovation, that's playful, that is convenient? Trust me, people will pay anything if you can make their life more convenient. Simplicity, I already talked about. Surprise. We don't get surprises anymore. People don't exceed our expectations anymore. And usefulness. Usefulness is forever. Usefulness will always be valuable. So how do we then, I call it a persona. Many people might call it a brand, or the elements of a brand. I mean, how do we then own one of these words that really helps us deliver our value proposition, that really helps us deliver on our purpose? So that was your homework. That was your hard part series of questions. So hopefully you found some of those questions to really jot down and spend some time with. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, because as I said, one of the things that I truly found in these commitment engine businesses was that they were driven, no surprise really, but they were driven by very passionate people that were there that also believed in the purpose, people that were drawn to this clarity, and culture in many ways was really just an amplification of clarity. It was an amplification of simplicity, or it was an amplification of dreaming in the examples that I shared. So I'll give you an example of some. There definitely are. I have found there definitely are some best practices. There are some. I'm going to explain a company that some of you. I found that people either get really excited and very passionate about Bill's story, or they say he's a nut. But I'll let you decide that. Really cool company in Fairfield, Iowa, called the Sky Factory. Bill Witherspoon was 65 years old, decided he needed to start his fourth company because he was bored after selling off his companies. But what he said, he told me, is that in his past companies, the only thing that really challenged him in growing his companies, he just felt like he was not a good people person. He was not very good at managing people, I should say. And that aspect always drove him crazy. So he said, you know what, I'm going to just throw out everything I ever learned about how you're supposed to build an organization and manage people, and I'm going to go counter to everything that I think I've ever learned, and try to build a different kind of company. He actually said, I want to build a beautiful corporation, is what the words that he actually used. First, before I get into the elements of his beautiful corporation, I got to tell you what they do is so cool. So they make what are essentially skylights, but they are video skylights. And so these are panels. This happens to be a gift shop that is in the first floor of a 10-story building. And so these are skylights that actually have obviously here they look just like pictures, but they're actually animated. So the clouds actually move slowly by, and the trees move a little bit, and you feel like you're truly looking at this incredible, beautiful sky. The company has done extremely well. People are certainly for wellness clinics, for health reasons, are putting these things in. I imagine they're not cheap, but I think people are finding that the value in these, and they can build just about anything, and they really are amazing. But let me tell you a little bit about the culture that they were able to build by using a set of principles. So here are their core beliefs. Bill will tell you that when he went to build this company, he said, "I'm going to build autonomy, transparency, consensus, and shared ownership." Those are going to be our core beliefs, at least internally as a culture. So by autonomy, he meant there would be no hierarchy. There's no org chart. There are teams. And people actually on those teams rotate through managing the team, so that in a way everyone's a manager and no one's a manager. But what they found is that they have a much greater sense of teamwork. Everybody knows that they are going to be in the hot seat of leadership, next month, and so everybody really pitches in and creates a tremendous leadership atmosphere. Transparency. They share everything in terms of the health of the business, how much money's in the bank, how much profit they're making, what everything costs. Everybody knows everything about the day-to-day operations of the business. Consensus in all things, with the exception of maybe little decisions, all decisions that the company makes, there has to be 100% consensus. Now, this is still a pretty small company. There's only about 25 employees, but even things like hiring new employees, whether or not they hire somebody, everybody in the organization spends at least 5 or 10 minutes with anybody they're considering hiring, and they actually have to have 100% agreement on whether or not to hire that person before they will. And the last piece, and I'll come back and talk a little bit about how and why these things work together. The last piece is shared ownership. Everybody, I think there is a period of time when a new employee comes in, but for the most part, everybody in the organization is an owner and shares in a bonus pool of profit. And it's a very rich and lucrative bonus pool, but it's tied to performance. It's not hey, you've been here so long, so you get X amount of stock options. It's tied to key indicators that they all decide on using consensus, and they all can decide on because of transparency, and because they know that, again, they'll be in the leadership hot seat next month. So what they're able to do is actually create an environment. I have never seen, I mean, their culture, their healthy culture is not about espresso machines and pinball machines and foosball tables. It is about teamwork. It is about making sure that they get the customer everything that the customer expected. It's about jumping in. I mean, again, if you think about it, their performance or a great deal of their potential income is based on, pegged to something like 100% on-time shipment. Well, I can guarantee you that people are checking with the shipping department saying, "You need any help? Everything going okay?" Because they know that they all are part of that team. So that's really, you think about this idea of consensus and autonomy. At this level, that you'd have chaos, but what Bill shared with me, and this makes total sense, is he says, what I want everyone in the organization to do is to think like an owner. Isn't that the dream for all of us? We want everybody that works for us to think like an owner. Well, as an owner, nobody's telling you what to do, right? You have complete autonomy. You should know all the numbers and the health of the business. As an owner, you certainly do participate in making the decisions. So if you think about it, what we're doing by putting these other beliefs in of autonomy, transparency, and consensus is we are naturally turning everybody that comes to work in that organization into to owners, or at least we're creating what I like to call psychic ownership. Whereas a lot of organizations, when stock options are just given or they're expected, I think it actually does the reverse. I think in many cases it creates an environment where people feel entitled, and I don't know too many owners that feel entitled. True owners that feel entitled, they in many cases know what they have to do to make things happen. So these are for the Sky Factory. This created, as I said, one of the healthiest cultures I've ever seen. People wanted to be there. They wanted to be a part of this, and they believed in everything that the organization did because they were able to create this environment of shared ownership. So how do they amplify this? They constantly share stories of what works, how it works, why it works. They have these shared beliefs. They get together and share all their plans and all of their plannings. As a group, they determine what are going to be the outcomes, what are they going to measure, how everybody is paid on. And it creates then that they do actually physically have shared ownership, but it's certainly the first step, I think, is to create this culture of shared ownership as well. So let's go to the third C that I talked about. So we talked about the extreme clarity of the single-minded purpose of why we do what we do, that then is brought to the culture or amplified in the beliefs, the shared beliefs of everyone that works for the organization. And what I found is that in many cases where those two things exist, a healthy community is really just the outcome, the natural outcome in many ways of a business that's built that way. And I think so often we do this backwards. We think in terms of, I need to go out and build this community, or I need to go out and get customers. Quite frankly, that's what most of us think. And if you think about this idea of I need to get extreme clarity, then I need to help our staff understand these shared beliefs that we need to take to the community. I think that it not only gets easier, it is in many ways it's a natural outcome. So I'm going to share a couple more stories of companies that I think have really taken this idea of building community, of really looking at this as more than a zero-sum game, that really all of the kind of mutual stakeholders need to win in order for the business to win. So this is actually a business in my hometown. Natalie George is the owner of a company called Cafe Gratitude. It is it's beyond vegan. It's a raw, but certainly healthy place to eat. I take people there all the time, and once they get past the fact that there's no meat on the menu or other things, they actually come away thinking this is one of the healthiest meals they've ever eaten. I'll show you a quick picture of this. It's just inside the restaurant. Very, very cool place. The thing that's funny is this restaurant opened, I'm going to lose track of time now, but only been probably less than a year. But the business started and the community started about 3 years ago. Natalie went out and found, some of you may recognize the name Cafe Gratitude, went out and found a Cafe Gratitude restaurant in Berkeley, California, fell in love with it, fell in love with everything that they stood for, went to the owners and said, I want to be Cafe Gratitude in Kansas City. And they said, well, that's a nice idea. Let's keep talking. And so she continued to talk, but not just with the idea of buying the franchise, if you will, but with building a community in Kansas City. So she came back to Kansas City and she started talking about this idea and sharing her idea and sharing her vision for this, even though she had never run a restaurant before, even though she didn't have the money to start a restaurant. She started building a community and tapped into the community that believed in this form of healthy eating. And she started putting on workshops. She started holding events. She started actually creating ways for this community to crowdfund. I'm not sure that she really called it that, but that's what it was, to crowdfund this business. And I think that her efforts, not only allowed her to fund the venture, to have the confidence to start the venture, to have people who were excited about pitching in and helping any way possible. I went to the opening event, and the line for literally wrapped around the building, just for people to try to get in for that kind of opening night where people were going to see it. So before she ever opened the door, she had built a strong and vibrant community that believed in her clarity, that believed in the culture that she was building, and wanted to be a part of it in any way, shape, or form. So she had a program called Community Builders where people could buy a gift certificate for $1,000 and they would get $1,200 worth of food. She had events, community building workshops, just really, again, tapping into the nice thing was obviously there was a community already sort of started and founded around this idea, this shared idea, and she was actually just able to bring them together. And it from a practical standpoint, I think if any of you are out there thinking about starting a business or know that you're going to start a business, start building your community right now. Start blogging, start getting email subscribers. Again, not just so you have something to sell to somebody, because these are going to be your people that are going to share your vision. These are going to be people that are going to help you find the partners and the answers and all of the information and expertise that you're going to need to get going. Start focusing on that community first. Another great company that has a great community story that I'll share. Some of you probably bought T-shirts from Threadless, a company in Chicago, Illinois. I don't know if you know the story about this company or not, but a couple graphic designers decided that they thought it was a shame that there were all these talented graphic designers out there that really weren't able to showcase a lot of their work. They'd actually started a forum for graphic designers and really built a nice little community of people interested in talking about sharing ideas in graphic design. So one day on a lark, they just said, let's have a T-shirt contest. We got a lot of talented people in here. Everybody submit your designs for a T-shirt, and the winning one we'll give some prize to, and we'll go ahead and print their T-shirt. So the idea was so popular, it just kind of popped into their head that maybe this could be a business. So they did it a few more times and finally said, we're going to turn this into a business. So and again, I have to show you their offices. I think it says a lot about their culture. This is in their offices in Chicago, and this is right when you walk in the door. This is what you're greeted with. A couple Airstream trailers that they use, as they call them, think pods, that people go into. Of course, I could carry this out to the warehouse where they have a full basketball court, and it's just really an incredibly fun place to work. I couldn't believe the people that had come to work for Threadless. They have, I don't know what the numbers are today, but about 25% of the employees had really just shown up and said, I want to work here. I'm a part of the community already, and I want to be a part of this, now that the business is actually growing. So for what is so unique about Threadless is their entire business is the community. They don't exist unless their community members submit designs, and again, I don't think I shared that. Now what they've come to is 3 or 4 times a week now, T-shirt designs are chosen from this very, very large million-plus community that submits thousands of designs every week, and now they sell millions of T-shirts and have expanded into other products. But the community really is the business. The community creates the product. The community buys the product. The community votes on what they actually do create. And so their business truly is all of the stakeholders coming together to generate revenue. So for building this strong community, some best practices. Begin with the end in mind is another sort of cliche statement, but I think it really it applies to this idea of thinking about community. What do you want the end goal for everybody involved to be? Is there a model that you can use to really disrupt? I think you look at so many of these companies now that are being started by disrupting models, by showing people how they can share things. I'm in a couple weeks going on vacation in the Virgin Islands and staying in a little hut that we found on Airbnb. One of my favorite examples of somebody that just completely disrupted the model by collecting a community and saying there's a different way that we could do these things. The car rental business is being changed that way. Almost every industry is being changed now by people saying, how can we bring community together? Education is really how many of the examples that I talk about. I talk about Threadless, and I talk about Natalie George. I mean, she'll tell you that she does very little advertising. She does very little to no selling. All she does is educate people on why this food is healthier for them. I think that some of the best practices of community builders is that they understand that strategic relationships with partners are a huge driver of community. I think a lot of times we get really focused on who can buy from us in the community, and I would suggest that there are many businesses where the people that never buy from you are perhaps as important, and in some cases more important than the people that actually buy, because they're the ones that are telling your story, they're the ones that are sharing, they're the ones that are actually helping you find the resources that you may need to actually build your business. And then the last sort of best practice in this idea of community building is to really think of your business as a platform for all of the potential stakeholders to build on. Is there a way that you could use your business to better the lives and the businesses, certainly of your customers? But what about your employees? Could you use your business as a way to actually allow your employees to launch their dreams, to allow your strategic partners to build their business? And I think that frame of mind, that way of thinking, that your business is not just something to drive revenue and to drive profits, but that could actually be a place for other things to be built upon, is really probably one of the highest forms of community building. So that's the information that I was going to share today. I don't know what we have in terms of wrap-up or questions. I know we haven't really been asking for questions, but a few people have come in with questions. But again, I'll just kind of finish up with these last thoughts. Again, clarity is focused strategy. Culture is then just that clarity amplified. And if you do those two things and focus on the community, that will just be the natural outcome of the work. So from a question standpoint, I don't know if I should do this before or after the questions, but I'll leave you guys with one question before we really go. I think that probably the most important thing you need to be asking yourselves when you start a business, whether you go to work 9 to 5 in a business or whether you are trying to build a business, is what is it about the work that you do that makes it worth it?
Excellent. John, thank you so much. We do have a few minutes for questions. I have a couple that I'd love to kick off with. One of the things you talk a lot about in the book and in your presentation is really about storytelling, if you boil it all down. And so you talked about sort of writing the story of your life or your purpose story. How does one engage in the practice of writing his or her purpose story? Is there an exercise, or is like the question you've asked here at the end, is there a way to get people thinking about that? Because I don't think that most people would sit down to write his or her purpose story.
I don't think there is. I mean, there are probably some exercises that could help stimulate it. I don't think there is a one answer. I've discovered that I think everybody has it, because I don't think many people start a business because they think, oh, I can get really rich doing this. I mean, there's certainly, that may be an element. They, of course, usually quickly find out that it's a little harder than that. But I think really we tend to start a business for a reason. A lot of times it has to do with I want to make some sort of difference, and so I think that it starts there. If you have an existing business, I think sitting down and asking people, what is the difference we're making? What do you see as our higher purpose? I think sometimes hearing that from other people, because one of the challenges I think that I find, particularly with individual business owners, is that they're a lot of times they're just doing the stuff they think they should be doing, and they're just it's what they're passionate about, but they don't stop to think about why they're necessarily doing it. But I think taking the time to reflect on some of those questions that I asked, and really trying to locate what was a time in your business. This is one of especially anybody that's been in business for any amount of time. What was a time in your business that you can identify was a turning point, or that was a high point, or was it a time when, or even think in terms of, over the course of the last month, when I say in the book, I said, just think about the last time you really smiled. What made you smile about your business? And as simple as that kind of stuff sounds, if you can bring that back up, in many cases it can help you start remembering, here's not only why I do what I do, but here's a brilliant example, that really illustrates it. Do we have the time? I have a story I can tell you.
Yeah,
in my own life. I was really transitioning. I wanted to work with small business owners, but I had a traditional marketing agency. I was kind of half and half. I was working with really large organizations doing work and working with smaller organizations, but I really found that I really loved working with smaller organizations. But I didn't, there was something holding me back from just saying I'm going to completely sell out and figure out a way to just work with, and I meant sell out in a good way.
Thanks for clarifying that.
With small business owners, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. But I was, that money I was getting from those other things was kind of holding me back. And I did this project for a big company, and it was a really small thing. And I want to say to you, well, I know exactly what the invoice was. It was $1,526. So a really small project. And about 90 days later, I got a check in the mail from this large organization for $153,206. Now, if there had been another zero on it, I sometimes consider, if I would have cashed it. But, it was a moment, I would tell you, in my business where I said, especially what made it even worse was that I then called them up and they gave me all, 3 forms I had to fill out and all this stuff just to give the check back. So, that was the moment in my business where I said, I'm never, ever again going to work with clients and customers that we don't have mutual respect, and so now when I work with a small business owner, there's something both parts terrifying and gratifying about knowing that you're trying to get a result for the same person who's probably going to sign that check that they send you, and so that's in a lot of ways that's a big part of my purpose narrative.
Well, and I love the way that you talk about really aligning your values, understanding not only what the company's looking for as a client, but what you can offer back. So I think that's a great way to align. And, another thing you talked about early on, and even it has sort of pieces in the story you shared, is I love the idea that we all have a superpower. And so what are some ways to go about discovering our superpowers?
Well, that's a tough one too, because again, as you said, it's usually not a skill or a job function. It's kind of what I love to tell people is you have to spend time studying. What are the things you love doing, and what is it about those things that you love? And I think sometimes that can really help you. There are actually some pretty decent personality test type of things too that I think can be helpful in identifying the things that you might call your unique ability as well. So I think a combination of those things. But I think the bigger thing is to really try to dig into why do you love doing what you're doing. And I think sometimes when you get down to that level, something will emerge.
That's great. That's great. I think it speaks to the last question you asked us. Why do you love what you do?
Exactly.
Why do you love it? So, we have several questions from our audience, and one of the questions sort of on the same line of discussion is, does your research show or validate the importance of being committed to a higher power or a higher purpose, and the role that higher power plays in life and in business? And that is that the business is a means to a greater end, which the entrepreneur feels called. And is this a nice to have, or is it essential?
Wow, that was a big question. I did find that this term, I've been using higher purpose. Now, there's some potential for people to misinterpret what that means or to have their own interpretations. I've found that there are certainly a lot of interpretations to that term. So I don't think that I would go as far as saying that what I do believe is essential is that you connect to some higher purpose for your business. What I would not go as far as saying is trying to define what that is or how to categorize that. It doesn't have to be something that we think of as doing social good. It doesn't have to be something that, and I'm going to use the questioner's, I'm going to put my own label on the questioner's, higher power. It doesn't have to be something we associate as spiritual or religious in any way. I think it just has to be something. I don't think you can do harm with your higher purpose, but I don't think it has to be something that we naturally associate with with doing good. I think it needs to be something that drives you, that attracts other people. For example, there's a story in the book about a business owner who has an extremely profitable, extremely well-run auto collision business in it's either Indianapolis or Cincinnati. I can't remember. Sorry, and he clearly says that the higher purpose in his business is he wants to make as much. He wants to do such an incredible job that he makes as much money as he can, so that he can invest it actually in the things that he wants to do, which is building up his community, buying buildings and refurbishing those and turning them into community centers. And so he personally has this higher power, and higher purpose. But his business, what drives him in his business is actually to create something that people are so willing to pay, very, very, premiums for, that he can then do the other work that he wants to do. So I think that's, a way to so I do think in a way, it's not a nice to have. It's an essential, but you get to define what it is.
That's great. Another one of our listeners asks, what insights do you have for projecting your updated 4 Ps to one's social or web presence? Is there a way to utilize social media or related marketing to really communicate the 4 Ps?
Yeah, Richard, those are really, those are the social media tools, all the online tools. Those are just tools. To me, those are if you find this idea of passion and purpose, and certainly the value proposition that we talk about, those are all of those new tools that we have. Frankly, every tool that you have at your disposal, including hanging out at the Chamber of Commerce, networking event. Those are all just ways for you to share your stories, for you to share your 4 Ps. So I certainly think that sharing what you share on Facebook, what you share on LinkedIn, what you share on Twitter, those are all things that those are all opportunities or all avenues for you to share the 4 Ps as we've described them, as they relate to your business.
Another one of our listeners says that her company is 15 years old, and she sold a portion of it. So she still has retained some of those employees, but she's trying to rebuild what's left over. And so the question is, how do I jump into the new business with 6 employees that have been here for a variety of time, some for just 3 months and others for a couple of years?
Well, I think one of the things I would suggest, and again, I'm going to make some huge leaps here because I don't know the full story, but change is very difficult. Change, a lot of times I've had people that have heard me speak or they've read my book and they say, I want to change my culture. Well, whether you know it or not, your culture is really just a collection of, how you've been, who you've been, how you've been, the experience that everybody's had at the organization consistently. So changing that can be in some cases a very difficult process. I think your real best hope is to actually bring people in, make them a part of the process, make them a part of the planning, to help them create, as a team or as a unit, create what are our shared beliefs, what is the higher purpose of this business, and really get people. It's very difficult for you to come back to them and say, here's our new mandates, right? That your real best chance of shaping a culture that is anything like what I've talked about is that you actually do it with them and that you are consistent with it. You can't make this up. You can't say, here's what ought to be our culture. It has to be something. It is something that exists, and you have to just find a way to mold it and then make it come to life.
Very good. Thank you so much. Several of our listeners have asked whether they can listen to this again and if they can see some of the slides. The playback for today's author series event will be available. As ever, we will send out a link to the replay, so please feel free to check that out. A couple of people, John, have asked specifically about a couple of your slides. So one question is, can you talk again about the Sky Window owner, tell his name, and then reiterate the 4 points under culture is clarity?
Sure. So his name is Bill Witherspoon, and it's called the Sky Factory, and they're in Fairfield, Iowa, a little tiny town in I think it's southeast Iowa. The 4 points were autonomy, transparency, consensus, and ownership.
And so we'll make that our last question. John, thank you so much
You
for
bet.
being here and for being here live and in person. This was great fun for me and wonderful to have you here again in our Kauffman FastTrac studio. Thank you to all of our listeners. We will meet again next month on Wednesday, March 13th. At that event, we will feature Ash Maurya, who's the author of Running Lean. And Ash will share his perspective on the popular lean startup methodology that so many of you are, I'm sure, exploring at this point. And so I hope that you'll join us. We will send out an invitation to that event. And of course, you can view more about that event and other FastTrac Author Series events at fasttrac.org/authors. John, thanks so much.
You bet, my pleasure.